Sales Talk. I am one of your co-hosts, Sean Mitchell. We've got other co-host, Henry Johnson, and we've got our really, really cool guest, Jeb Blount. Welcome to the show, Jeb. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. And just for the record, my last name is spelled Blunt.
Great.
And you guys would know that out in Colorado with all the stuff you got going
on.
So,
I figured to play it safe and say Blount instead of Blunt because I'm not sure. I'm sure you have some stories around the name.
It's actually okay because if you're in the South, it's Blunt, and if you're anywhere else, it's Blount, and nowhere else people can understand why in the world would you call it Blunt. But it's the South, so we can't speak English anyway. So that's why.
That's awesome. So this is Real Sales Talk. This is a show for salespeople by real salespeople that sit in the seat, that have quotas, that sell and pass along their tips, tricks, and techniques to you. And every once in a while, we've got great guests on the show like Jeb. Super, super excited to talk about prospecting. And the title that I came up with was Why Salespeople Suck at Prospecting and How to Fix It. So I'm really, really excited about diving in. Henry, I know that for those that are watching us right now and want to chat about us on social media, how can they do that?
Yeah, so to chat, so Sean and I are always on social media, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter. I think in terms of discussing this, Twitter's probably the best. # Real Sales Talk is the best place to talk with us. I was actually getting on there earlier doing little videos. I don't know if you saw it, Jeb, to people who were talking about sales gravy and fanatical prospecting, letting them know we're going to be on. So just put in # Real Sales Talk, or you can write to myself at Talk to Henry J, Sean at Sean and Mitchell, and Jeb at Sales Gravy on Twitter.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and for those that are listening to the recording of this, the hashtag is still an incredible way to kind of jump into the conversation if you missed it live. So don't hesitate to do that. If you are watching this live, Google Hangouts is the layout's a little bit different than what we've previously been using. By the way, this is like season 2, episode 1. This is a very first episode of our season 2. So we're super excited to have made it through season 1 and mutually decided between the two of us that we like the show. We like doing the show enough to give it another run for another 10 episodes. So excited to get this running again for another 10. Google Hangouts on air. There's a little option top right if you're watching this as a viewer that will allow you to click an option to ask questions. If you have questions for Jeb, for me, or for Henry, feel free and type those in. I'll see them and we can fill them when appropriate. So, Henry, I'm going to kick this over to you to let you get this discussion going. Did we lose you, Henry?
Am I losing you guys here?
I can hear you. Jeb, you on?
I'm on.
Cool. Henry, I'm going to kick it over to you, and why don't you start off with a question for Jeb?
Yeah, so I'll just start with the background. I think that's always a good way to just introduce you to the Real Sales Talk audience here. So, Jeb, if you don't mind, would you give us just a quick background, how you got into sales, how you got started with everything that you're doing now?
That's a long background because I started selling when I was in the womb. I've been in sales my whole life, and it started with being on the yearbook staff when I was in high school, and being the #1 ad sales guy. I worked for Nutrisystem. I sold tons of stuff when I was in college. Even started my own business selling credit card processing in college. But I spent most of my career with in the uniform services industry, and I started off, selling industrial uniforms. Ended up as a vice president of sales for the organization, and then eventually started my own company, Sales Gravy. And I love that this is this is real, because I really sit in a seat with my folks today. We were sitting right here and just over there in the studio, and we were in here making cold calls into vice presidents of sales, testing out a new training program, and basically we were going in and asking them, what they were doing, qualifying them, and seeing what type of reception that we would get. But I spent most of my time selling, or either that or leading salespeople. And then started my own sales training company, and SalesGravy is also salesgravy.com. We're the largest sales employment portal for salespeople in the world, and I started that 10 years ago. And we just started our second company, a company called Channel EQ, which focuses on indirect sales through value-added resellers, that type of thing. And it's been a really good run. I mean, it's been fun, but I love that, I walk into an office every single day, and my team and I have got to do the same thing that every other sales team in the world has to do. We have to pick up the phone, we have to send emails, we have to get on social, we have to do everything we can to fill up the pipeline in order to survive.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Keeping it going daily. Just picking up the phone. I was watching one of your some of your videos on YouTube earlier today, talking about kind of setting up time to do prospecting. I mean, can you dive a little bit more into like your prospecting theory and how you guys kind of go about it at SalesGravy, and how you do it yourself?
Absolutely. I think that goes back to the premise that why do salespeople suck at prospecting? I mean, number one reason why they suck at prospecting is they don't actually do it. And I know that's a blinding flash of the obvious, but it's the truth. If you don't prospect, then nothing's going to happen. One of my buddies, Anthony Areno, says activity always solves an activity problem. So what we prescribe, and we do this in my own company, is we do prospecting blocks. Today, for example, we were calling vice presidents of sales. We had a prospecting block. Our goal was to do 25 dials in 30 minutes. Took us a little bit longer than that because we had a couple of people on the telephone a little bit longer than we expected, but we learned something from it. But we set up these blocks. And the block of time, we call them a phone block. It can be 30 minutes. It can be an hour. The other day ago, we were doing power 15 minutes. We were doing 15 minutes at a time as hard as we could, and then we'd take a break. We'd go high-five each other, get a cold drink, and then we would go do it again. And we were doing this all as a team, me included, making cold calls. And I know that some people say cold calls don't work anymore, but we did $3.5 million last year in cold calls, so it's working for me. And the idea is if you can set aside time every single day, every day, and you can block that time and concentrate your focus in that time, you'll be way more efficient, you'll get way more done, you'll be more effective. And if you're in inside sales, and part of my team is an inside sales team, we dial all day long, but we break our time up into 3 core blocks a day. We do 3 hours of power dialing every day. And that's about all that we need. The rest of the time, we're doing all the other sales stuff that we have to get done. Blocking your time is transformational for salespeople. It will change your life, and it will help you sell more. Now, there's one more thing, Henry. I think this is important. Guy sent me a note on Twitter last night, and my Twitter handle is @SalesGravy if you're listening. But sends me a letter and says, how many hours did you prospect every day? And I wrote back and said, 1 to 2 hours for most B2B salespeople. If you're really hitting it hard, is all you need to fill the pipeline up. He said he prospects 3 hours a day, except he hasn't been doing it lately because he had too much administration work to do. So here's the other thing. You have to do it every day. Yes, there are days when you can't get it all in because you've sold a bunch of stuff and you've got to service clients. Yes, there are going to be times when you've got a meeting, you've got this going on, you've got this going on, you've got this going on. That's true. But you still have to set the time aside. It has to become a default for you every day, because the cumulative impact of every single day prospecting is exponential in terms of filling your pipeline up and filling your bank account up.
I really, really love that, and that's one of the takeaways that I received when I read Fanatical Prospecting. It's putting it in the calendar, carving out that time, making that time sacred, so that it doesn't get filled up with other things, because there's always I don't know if it's human nature, and maybe you can provide some insight into this, Jeb, but I don't know if it's human nature, but it always seems like there's something better to do or something happening that needs to be taken care of at that very moment that you go and you prospect. Do you hear that a lot from sales reps?
Absolutely. I mean, the number one thing we hear from salespeople is, hey, I don't have time to prospect. But if you think about it this way, every day as a salesperson, you have three choices to make. You can do things that are trivial, you can do things that are important, and you can do things that are impactful. And look, there are important things to do, but important doesn't necessarily mean that it's having an impact ultimately on your paycheck. And there's a law called Parkinson's Law, and it describes how work tends to expand into the time that's given to it. However, there's an offshoot of Parkinson's Law called the Law of Triviality. And when you say, is it human nature? Absolutely, it's human nature. The Law of Triviality simply describes that human nature is that if we were given a list of things to do every day, like a list, and there were really, really impactful things in a list, important things in a list, and trivial things in a list, most people will start working on the trivial things first, leaving the things that are most impactful for last, and those things ultimately never get done. And if you're watching, all you got to do is think about a Saturday or a weekend where you've got a list of chores to do, and the way you attack the chores, almost everybody takes the things that don't matter on first, leaving the things that matter most to last.
So is it better to do the most difficult or the most challenging thing first? For example, prospecting, get it out of the way, and then do the other things after that?
Absolutely. If you think about if you just think about prospecting as a chore in sales, let's just call it what it is. Prospecting sucks. Nobody really likes to do it. There's always something better to do. We all love to close business. We all love to build relationships. We all love to, move deals through the pipe. We like to build, presentations, all the things. We like to do demos. Nobody likes to prospect. But everybody wants to have a full bank account, and everybody wants to make a big commission check, and everybody wants to stand on the mountain and say, I'm the number one salesperson. Everybody wants those things. But that success, those things that you really enjoy doing in sales, that's paid for in advance with prospecting. Prospecting is the price that you have to pay for anything that you want to accomplish in sales. So if we know that it sucks and we know that it's not fun, we know that we'll put it off. We know that if we say, I'll do it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that we're going to find some excuse. The best thing you can do as a sales representative is to come in the morning, don't open email, don't open Facebook, don't watch cat videos, don't do any of that stuff. Pick up the phone and do a phone block. That's the first thing you should do. And what you'll be amazed is that instead of worrying what's the best time to call, if you call early in the morning, most of your prospects are at their desk. You're going to get a higher pickup rate. We know that happens in our office. If we do our call blocks early in the morning, we get way better pickup rates than we do in the afternoon. You're going to be fresher, more confident, feel better. Your prospects are going to be in a better mood because they're just starting their day, and it just makes sense to do that. But if you don't embrace the suck of prospecting and do it in the morning, we call it eating the frog. If you don't eat the frog first thing in the morning, I promise you that you'll figure out a way to put it off, and you'll say, I'll double up tomorrow, and tomorrow the same stuff's going to hit you. And then, one day you're sitting there, you get an empty pipeline, and you're desperate, and then what do? You're doing it all day long trying to catch up, and that really sucks.
So when you think about prospecting and the way that you approach it, Jeb, are you doing all phone calls? Are you leading up with an email, then calling? Are you leaving voicemails after calls? Can you just walk us a little bit more through your process and how you guys approach it?
It's a little bit of all of the above, and I believe in balance on prospecting. So we do email, phone, social, but I'll tell you how I feel about the email before a call. It's what a lot of reps call warming up the calls. They're trying to make it warm. I have a client of mine who they had a process where they got a list and they would send 8 emails to the list and then they would call. And it wasn't working out very well for them. And one of the things that happened is they would call up, and if they did get somebody on the phone, the person was pissed off because they'd sent them 8 emails in a row. And it turned out that their contact rates, their appointment rates with those leads just wasn't that great. They got me on the phone looking for help as a consultant, and I just asked an obvious question: why didn't you just pick up the phone and call them in the first place? I mean, if you gave me a list, the first thing I would do is dial the list. Why? Because somebody's going to answer the phone. for example, today we did a cold call list of 25 VPs of sales. We had 8 of the VPs of sales answer the phone, 8 of them. Now, if we'd have sent the email and then try to contact them on social and done all those things, probably 8 of them would have answered the phone the second time we called after all of that stuff. But we just picked the list up, called those 8. We found out some information. About 4 of them were qualified, 4 of them weren't. And then that left the rest of them that we'll do an email outreach to this week, and then we'll call them again. And if we know someone's really qualified, then of course we'll do everything that we can to set an appointment with them. So we may call, leave a voicemail, send an email, hit them up on social. If we were talking earlier about one of my clients has got a really long sales cycle. They go to a lot of trade shows. We know who's going to be there. We research them in advance on LinkedIn. We find their pictures, build almost like a profile or a dossier about them, and then when we go there, we go out and meet them and talk to them. We do all of those things. But the question, Henry, and I think it's a really important one, is do I email or call? Call. Pick up the phone. Talk to somebody. Call them. Because if you get them on the phone, at least you can accomplish something. If you send an email, you're just junking up their email box, and you're not getting anywhere. And if they don't answer the phone, of course you want to use email. Of course you want to use everything that you can, but call them. I mean, I just cannot tell you how powerful the phone is. And it's baffling to me how salespeople don't get this.
I think it comes down to, and this reminds me of a podcast that you and Anthony, I think, did about talking about rejection. I think it comes down to rejection. People just hate to be rejected. It feels uncomfortable. So I think you're right. I tend to personally, I grew up in the sales environment where I had to use the phone. Maybe email wasn't as valuable as it is now with alerts and tracking and so on. We've got Kellen, one of my friends, on the line here, who's a sales manager for a software company, and this is his question here. Jeb, for a sales rep who has spent the majority of their sales career in a reactive sales role, how do you transition them into a proactive prospecting mindset without overwhelming them?
Oh man, I love that question, and it's a great question, and it is $1 million question, and it's if for example if I were hiring people to come work for me and they had spent their entire life as an inbound rep, knowing that my job is primarily outbound, I would probably think twice about actually bringing that person on, because I think it's very, very difficult for people to make that transition. And I've seen more people crash and burn from that standpoint than probably any other. We use something called the Sales Drive Assessment Test. We give it to our own employees, but we use it for our clients as well. And it tests for that. It doesn't test for a whole lot of stuff. It tests for one thing: will you get up every day and happily dial the phone? And some people are really good at it, and some people aren't. But if I were going to do that, so if I were going to bring someone in, I would do it in a similar way that I'm working with my son right now. So my son's 18 years old, and he's heading to college, but I want him to be a part of our business. And you can imagine if you're 18 years old and dad says, hey, get on the telephone and go cold call, it's not met with the whole, man, this is great, because most people would probably rather get a tooth pulled than, do a cold call. So I took him on the road with me, and I had him spend some time with some of the reps that I teach in one of our Fanatical prospecting boot camps. And I turned my back for a minute. He got on the telephone and started dialing, and he did some dials. Those dials were a lot easier than my dials. And in our world, especially when we're selling employment advertising, it's a really hard sell. We're calling really tough prospects who get tons and tons and tons of calls and emails and touches from thousands of salespeople. There are like 40,000 competitors in the space, so it's a really ugly space. It's the hardest call we make. And what I did with him is I put him in a situation where he made 15 dials and then stopped, and then 15 dials and stopped. So instead of giving him, hey, here's a list of 100, I want you to dial them, I gave him 15 at a time. And I said, as soon as you're done with the 15, I want you to stop, take a break, come see me, brush it off, here's a book to read, and then I'd give him 15 minutes, or sometimes we would give him something else to do that was completely unrelated to selling, and then we would do 15 minutes more, and we'd do 15 minutes more and 15 minutes more. And what that allowed us to do was for this kid who is young and doesn't really know what he's doing and is making some mistakes on the telephone, is we're getting $60 a day out of him, and he doesn't feel like he's making $60 a day. So we're taking that whole concept of blocking, we're breaking it up into real small chunks, and we're going a little at a time. So that would be the one thing that I would say that you have to do. The other thing is, if you're bringing someone in who has been in an inbound role for a long time, you want to set them up for success. So what typically happens is you bring people in and you give them the worst leads that you have. So you reach into your database and you take a pile of crap out and you give it to them and say, dial these. That's typical because you don't want to waste your best leads and your best opportunities on people that you don't trust. But if you do that, what happens is their entire experience is really hard because most of what they call on just doesn't turn into anything. So what I suggest doing is creating some lists that won't break the company, but will give them some early wins. And then again, I break them up in small chunks, a lot of coaching, a lot of hand-holding, and I think along the way you can bring people on. But again, I think if you spend a lot of your life getting inbound leads, it's a tough transition to make because you're spending more time prospecting really than selling. Inbounds, honestly, every call is almost a sales call. Does that make sense?
What are some of those personality traits that you look for when you're looking for someone who you need to make outbound phone calls?
Yeah, there are three core traits that we look for, and this is what we test for in Drive, and it's optimism. So we want people who, they make a call, someone tells them no, they go, the next one's going to say yes, and it's almost, I mean, it's like blind optimism, and I that's me. I make a call, someone says no. Like my son said today, he goes, why did they do that? Why did they just hang up on the phone with me? And I went, who cares? Make the call. To call the next one. It doesn't matter. Well, I want to know why. I go, I don't worry about why. They hung up. I can get to the next one faster. It's not a big deal. And that's optimism. You just look at the world and say, hey, there's one more coming. The next is competitiveness. And the reason competitiveness is so important is that you are going to get rejected. You're going to have adversity. You're going to get knocked down. That is a fact. Now, everywhere in sales that happens, even in inbound, that happens. Someone's going to tell you no. So you have to have the ability to get back up again. If you think about great competitors, I just think about what happened with the Cavaliers this week. So, LeBron, they're 3-1 deficit. And he gets back up again. He doesn't quit. He doesn't stop. He gets back up again and he keeps going. And so do his teammates. I know this is all about LeBron, but it wasn't just him. The entire Cavaliers team, they got back up and they worked harder. That's competitiveness. If you can look up, you can get up. And we want people that can do that. And when they get rejected, they don't curl up or fold up like an old lawn chair. They get pissed off and say, you know what? I'm going to do the next one. I'm going to get through the next one, and I'm going to toughen up. It was interesting to see my son today. He got a couple of VPs who were kind of mean to him, and he toughened up, and he went to the next one. He's a competitor, and he changed the way he was doing things. And the third one is the need for achievement. So I'm looking for people who have desire, that they want something more. If you have a need for achievement, you know that most of the time you're going to be doing things you hate in order to get what you really want. And so you're willing to pay the price. And so we need people who have a high need for achievement who say, I really want to be number one. I really want to win. And a way of looking at that is they're people that win for the sake of winning. They win because they have to. It's just driven. I love hunters that are like that. We used to have them. When I was the VP of sales, I would go visit my locations, and I had great salespeople that were driven hunters. They would go out and sign contracts. You could go look in the back of their car. There'd be a signed contract. They would throw it in the back of the car and go get another contract. Even though they didn't get paid until the contract got turned in, they were all about the win, and you need those type of people.
I love it. I love it. It's really, really cool to hear. I'm really curious, and this may be a little bit of a tangent, but relevant to the topic. How did you know that you were extremely passionate about prospecting versus, I don't know, building a sales team or being a specialist or a subject matter expert in management? Why prospecting?
Well, I think that Prospecting is a piece of the puzzle. So I've written 7 books. I've got a book called People Follow You. It's really popular. Our most popular training program that we teach as a company is in sales leadership and sales management, and we teach sales process, both complex and simple. We even work in the retail world. We work in high-end retail with something called customer experience selling. So we're really all over the board. But here's the thing that's interesting. Prospecting connects all of these dots. It's not a discipline in and of itself. Now, a lot of companies have split prospecting and sales, and they are 2 different things. And I get that, but they're intrinsically connected. And when we start thinking about leadership, the biggest fails in sales leadership are around prospecting. Sales leaders who don't have the courage to hold people accountable, who don't have the courage to get in there with their salespeople. For example, the question we got earlier, somebody's brand new, they're coming in the door, they don't really have this. Sales leaders who have the courage to sit down next to them and make dials with them and show them how it's done. So I think that I'm passionate about prospecting because prospecting is the root of all great things in sales. And as a sales representative for my companies, I've got a trophy room full of crystal and granite and rocks and silver and brass and all of these things that I won selling. Everything was from prospecting. I started a business based on prospecting. I love selling. I mean, I love the sales process. I love, big, huge, nasty, complex deals with, 20 stakeholders in a 2-year timeline where you really got to get into it and build relationships. And I love those things. But none of that happens if you're not willing to get stuff into the pipeline. And it's almost an epidemic today because salespeople are unwilling to do that. I mean, I hear salespeople all the time, I love closing, but I'm not a really good prospector. Well, dude, I got news for you. You're not closing if you're not a good prospector. And oh, by the way, the dude that's good at prospecting will outclose you any day.
100,000%.
That's like something I'm huge on. I think people try, like, if you don't have enough deals to close, you can't be a good closer because then you're just chasing things that really you shouldn't be chasing anyway. But you need to chase them because you need to eat.
That's
so
right.
it becomes a catch-20. So no, I think that's huge. So one thing that I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on is when you're prospecting, right? You're going to run into people, the people that hang up with you, but sometimes you get just objections, right? Just a certain type of objections. How are you coaching your people to kind of get past those objections, or how are you teaching other people to coach their teams on objections and facing that kind of stuff as they're prospecting?
Absolutely. I think that there's a couple of things. So if you're calling to set appointments or you're calling to gather information, that's one thing. If you're calling to move people directly into a sales conversation, so if you have a short cycle or even a more transactional sale, there's a couple of different things that are happening there because you have to be careful that they're not objecting to the sale, they're objecting to giving you time. And so an example was last night. I was booking a hotel room. I got shifted over somehow or another to the timeshare department. The guy gave me a pitch. I said no. I was objecting to his pitch, not objecting to spending time with him. And so it wasn't a prospecting objection. It was a sales objection. But we teach a simple process for dealing with what we call reflex responses, brush-offs, and objections. And we typically are getting those on prospecting calls. Reflex responses are just what, you say it, I say it, we walk into a store, somebody says, hey, can I help you? And you go, no, I'm just looking. That's a reflex response. You don't think about it, it just comes out of your mouth. Prospects do this all the time because salespeople call them all the time. Brush-offs are when they're telling you something like, hey, could you send me information? I don't have a lot of time right now. They're saying things to tell you no, but they're doing it in a way that you'll accept it because they don't want confrontation and neither do you. And an objection itself is something that's closer to the truth. For example, they may say, I used you before and it didn't go very well for us. That would be an objection. That would be someone saying no. And what these RBOs are standing in the way of is the prospect actually giving you time. And oh, by the way, and this is important, the hardest ask in sales, the hardest close in sales is getting someone's time. It is their scarcest resource, and people are crazy busy. So this makes the prospecting call doubly hard. We teach a 3-step prospect that basically uses an anchor, and all the anchor is a statement that you say that as soon as someone tells you no, you feel rejected, gives you a moment to collect your thoughts. And a moment, I'm talking about a split second, to collect your thoughts and deal with that neurophysical response to rejection. Your hands are getting sweaty, your heart's beating fast, you got that feeling in your gut. And so, for example, if you said I'm busy, I would say that's exactly why I called. That would be an anchor. That's exactly why I called. I say that all the time. People say anything to me, anytime they get a rejection, that's exactly what I called, or I'll say that's awesome, or I'll say a lot of people say that. But those are anchors, and I don't have to think about them. They're a reflex for me. That gives me a moment to collect my thoughts. And then what we do is we want to disrupt the prospect's thought process. And that's because they're getting calls all day long from salespeople, or emails all day long from salespeople. And so they have this certain set of expectations, and the human brain is brilliant at dealing with patterns. Once it starts seeing a pattern, and the pattern all looks the same, the brain begins to ignore it. It doesn't have to worry about it. And what we're trying to do on a prospecting objection or an RBO is to turn the person around and pull them towards us. You can imagine you call them, they're trying to get off the phone as fast as they can. They're moving away from you. If all of a sudden, for example, Henry, right behind you, you heard a really loud noise, boom, right? All of a sudden, you'd flip around, you'd be looking over there, you would lose attention to me. It would pull your attention. So I want to disrupt your expectations. I want to do something that you're not expecting. So if you tell me, hey, I'm really happy with the vendor that we have, I go, that's fantastic. Anytime you're getting great service and great prices, you should never think about changing. When I say something like that and agree with them, their brain's not ready for that. Immediately I get their attention. If you say I'm too busy, I say that's exactly why I called. I figured you would be, so let's find a time that's more convenient for you. What most salespeople do is either go away, they just fold up, or they try to argue the prospect into believing that they're wrong. Oh, no, this will only take a few minutes. And there's a universal law of human behavior that simply says that you can't argue another human being into believing they're wrong. So what we do is we disrupt their expectations. We say something or do something that they're not expecting. And then we ask again, confidently and assumptively. And I ask again, how about Thursday at 2 o'clock? So that's what we teach people. Now, let me give you an example of the day. So this is real. And you guys are real salespeople, real see everything. So today, we were testing out a new training program that we're trying to sell into companies. And it's a virtual training program. So we pulled a list of sales VPs, and we called them. And what we were testing for is what they would object to. What would they tell us no? How would we get pushback? Because what we do is once we understand what that is, we started adjusting what we were saying on the front end so that we weren't creating resistance where it didn't exist, and we iterated during the entire call block. We got better and better and better until the end we were actually having conversations, and we started listening to what they were telling us. And once we understood what those things were, then we were able to take that three-step process and apply it. Now, there's one more thing, since we're talking about objections, that I think is important. Whenever I'm in a training class, we do these things called Fanatical Prospecting Boot Camps, and I've got a group of trainers that go all over the country, and we also do those as virtual training programs. So, for example, we have a facilitator, but it'd be like this on a video call, and we teach this way. And we always ask people, how many ways can people tell you no on a prospecting call? Most salespeople say, well, it's infinite. I mean, they can tell you an infinite number of ways. So then we say, we get a board, and we say, okay, start telling all the ways people can tell you no. And it turns out that that there's a finite number of ways. I mean, I was with a group that was in the staffing industry. We came up with 11 ways that they could tell you no. There was 11 things they could tell you no. If I know the 11 ways, then I can anticipate any RBO anytime. And if I can anticipate it, I can plan for it. If I can plan for it, I can create a script, I can create a response, I can do those things. So all we use is the framework, apply that to a specific situation, and build a really short turnaround for that. And it works. And it doesn't work every single time. I mean, you're going to try to turn around a couple of times. People are going to tell you no, but it works. And that's how we begin to iterate and understand, what we're going to say, how we're going to say it. We don't have to do that anymore for the employment side and the advertising side of our business because we've heard them all. We know exactly what to say.
I really love the idea. I think that writing the objections down is really, really interesting because whether you're a sales manager or you're just an independent salesperson that really just wants to win, writing those objections down, I think will really shrink down the 1,000 objections that you have that you're getting, and it'll allow you to see that there's probably maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 that you get every single time, and you can write out responses for them so that you do know how to respond and it doesn't take you by surprise every single time.
Exactly. I mean, if you're treating an RBO like it's a random event, trust me, you go because your brain is just totally fried. Because when you get told no, I mean, the feeling of being told no, you said earlier, it sucks, people don't like it. Well, it's actually a real feeling. It's like when people say, well, let rejection roll off your back. I'm like, only the people that can do that are psychopaths. The rest of us, we really do feel it. So if we know that that's real, if we have the turnaround, then we don't let all of the the chemicals that are brewing in our brain and the adrenaline that's rushing through our blood, we don't let all that get in the way. We just know what to say when people say that to us.
So I've got another question coming in, Jeb. As it relates to in-person prospecting, do you feel that there is a weekly or monthly time allotment for sales reps that should be in the field making face-to-face introductions as opposed to making phone calls?
So here's what I believe about in-person prospecting. Now, again, if you're in a really short cycle transactional sell, so let's say that you're doing door-to-door sales where your prospecting call and your sales call are blended, what I'm about to say doesn't make sense. Okay, so in some cases it does. There are door-to-doors who have appointments, but most B2B field reps, you're making phone calls in order to set an appointment so that you can go get face-to-face and have a planned sales call. That's the reason why you're there. Otherwise, why have you in the field? We would just have you on telephone selling. So the way that you should manage your in-person prospecting calls is not on a time allotment. It is on a numbers allotment. Here's what I mean. Every day, for example, let's just say, Sean, you come in the morning and you make an hour to an hour and a half of prospecting calls. Your goal every day is to set 2 to 3 preset appointments where it's on your calendar, and the prospect is expecting you to be there and at a certain time. When you make those appointments, you should put a stake in the ground or a pin in the map, and then you should get into your database and you should look at other prospects that are around that particular appointment. So you're going out, an appointment is high value. An appointment has a higher probability of moving to the next step than just a cold call knocking on someone's door. So if you've got that, you have that in there, you've got a reason for being there, and then if you go into your database and go look around, all of a sudden you can build a route around that particular appointment. I suggest 5. I think 5 good prospecting calls that you can plan for around each appointment. So if you're going on 2 appointments a day, you're making 10 in-person prospecting calls a day. That's pretty good for a field rep. And what's beautiful about this is they're not just random calls. You can actually plan for them. I know where they are. I can look into my database. I can pull a sheet on them. I can even print that out. I can go to their website. I can come up with a couple of provocative questions that I want to ask walking through the door, something funny that I'm going to say, or I can use some existing relationships in the area to bridge into those by saying, oh, yeah, we take care of Henry down the street. He said that we should talk. I can do those things. And then here's what's beautiful. I've got maybe 5 planned IPPs, and then I've got my set appointment. And then we do something called T-calls, and that means that I've got my plans, but as soon as I go to my appointment, I look to my left, look to my right, look behind me, especially if you're an industrial sales rep or you're working in an office department, if you're in medical and you're working in medical places, there's people around you, and I knock on those doors. Those are kind of cold as well, but we have these amazing things. They're cool. They're called smartphones. So before I walk in the door, I can pull up their website. I can look at them. I can have a little bit of information, and I have something to compliment them on and ask a question. And so, Kellen, what you're doing is you make yourself amazingly efficient, because instead of saying I need to be out there for so long, which is meaningless with knocking on doors, because I could be out in the field for an hour and decide I'm going to drive to 2 of them that are 45 minutes apart, I become super efficient. I become much more effective, and what happens is all of those knocks, many of those will turn into better qualifying information in my database, which makes my database stronger, but at the same time, a lot of them are going to turn into appointments for the next week, and that's going to make me a better rep and fill up my calendar.
Awesome. I have another question from my buddy Dan. He couldn't get in on Google, but he texted me. He said, so how has the internet affected telephone-based prospecting? How would you recommend companies that are scaling to change their model? And I guess what he was talking about is, and he says this, is now people can do a lot of research online, how does that affect being able to prospect via the phone?
Well, I mean, if he's talking about the customers being able to research online, I mean, absolutely, they can research online, but unless you work for a company that is able to bring in enough leads to feed everybody all day long, you're gonna have to do outreach. And I believe in inbound. I mean, I think inbound, inbound prospecting, inbound marketing is strong. It means something. It's good, and it definitely puts food on the table. We spend a lot of money inbound prospecting and inbound marketing. But we never can get enough. If we don't make our calls, if we don't reach out to people, we're going to starve to death. And so when you put inbound with outbound, you get powerful. And let me give you an example of this. So we had a ton of inbound leads that came to us over about a 6-month period that we had called, and we had felt them out, we had qualified them, we sold some of them, but most of them we didn't sell. And that's true for most inbound leads. You're not selling most of the leads that come through the door. And so we started off June a little bit slow. We just weren't selling the deals that we needed, and I was getting a little bit panicked, I'll be honest with you, because the deals weren't coming in the door. So we went back and grabbed that list of inbound leads, and we put together a call and email campaign to them. So we called every single one of them, boom, 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 picked off the ones that we could pick off, and then we did an email campaign with a special offer. And then we looked at all the ones that were opened, and we called all of those folks. And then we emailed them again. And then we came back and called the entire list again. And you know what? We're killing it in June. We're rocking it. Those were inbound leads that came to us via the internet, but now we're calling them. Now, the flip side of that for salespeople, yeah, you can do the research, you can go out there and look, you can find out anything about any prospect, anytime, anyhow. But the internet is also a reason why salespeople suck at prospecting, because they try to get every single duck in the road to know everything about anybody before they actually pick up the phone. And I'm crazy about this. If I'm dialing and I really need to know something about you, I'm doing that research before I'm in my phone block. I do not research and dial at the same time. And so for me, and this is just my opinion, is I hear people say sales is harder than ever before and everything has changed and blah, 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 blah. Sales is hard, but it is not harder than it's ever been before. I've been in sales when it was hard. I've been in sales when there were phone books, actual phone books. I know the millennials in the audience are like, what's a phone book?
What are those?
Yeah. I've been in sales where the CRM was a box of index cards. I've been in sales where you truly were calling in and you had no information, didn't know anybody, you couldn't find out anything. You had to do everything on your own. Today, information's ubiquitous. And this whole idea that you can't call because people are finding things out on the internet, this is a myth that a group of people who have vested interest in telling you this are telling you so you'll buy their software. The truth is that if you sit around waiting for people to interrupt you, they will not. You have to interrupt them, and you have to use every tool at your disposal to do that.
Something that's funny about that is HubSpot, who's an inbound marketing company, actually does outbound sales. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mark Roberg and his team over there are dialing out every single day. And I'm a HubSpot customer, by the way, and I was sold on HubSpot on a cold call. They cold called me. Yeah. So yeah, everybody's got to do it. Inbound's great. Inbound works, and if you own a company or you're the marketing VP, you should be doing everything you can to get great inbound leads in. But here's the other thing that I think everybody needs to remember about inbound leads. The best, the most juicy, the most opportune prospects in your market, in your territory, in your industry are not responding to web forms. They don't have to because everybody's calling them.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So I want to get. So we've got about 15 minutes left, and I want to get really, really tactical, Jeb. Talk to the sales rep who is sitting in the seat. Okay, so he or she knows that they need to set to time block and to set something out like first thing in the morning and maybe first thing after they get back from lunchtime. Talk about call volume. Do they leave voice messages? Do they not? Can you get really tactical with good strategies that are effective that get responses?
So let's talk about voicemails first of all. So just think about how long it takes to leave a voicemail. Somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute. So if you take, say, let's just take we took a 30-minute phone block, and you dial, and and by the way, this is the truth. So everybody that's listening and watching, most of your calls are going to go to voicemail. Get over it. That's what's going to happen. So most of your calls go to voicemail. If you leave a voicemail on every single one of them, and let's just say that during that call block you made 20 dials, and half of them went to voicemail. Well, that's 10 minutes that you spent leaving voicemails. And if you think about the voicemail return rate on the typical, B2B outbound prospecting call, is somewhere between 2 and 5%. So you spent 10 minutes of your time on a really low probability return on that investment. So the thing about voicemail is this. The question is, should I leave a voicemail? And the answer is, I'm not going to tell you whether you should or shouldn't. I'm going to tell you that you only have so much time every single day. And how you invest that time is going to determine how much money you make. In other words, the way you invest your time is going to limit your income, or it's going to grow your income. So if you're going to invest your time, you want to put your time investment in high value or high return on investment activities. So when I think about voicemail, the way I do this is I leave a voicemail when it matters. So that goes to, how do you organize and build out your call blocks? If I'm a rep, my first call block of the day is going to be to what we call HPPs, or high probability prospects. We call it a prospecting pyramid. So you build a list with the best opportunities up top, and the opportunities you may not know a lot about at the bottom. So I'm dialing in. My first 10, say to 15 dials should be prospects that are qualified, moving, or in the buying window, that I know a lot about, and that have a need or a high propensity to buy my product because I'm able to create a need with them. I'm calling them to set an appointment or move them into an immediate sales conversation, move them into a demo or discovery call, whatever the case is. But I'm calling my highest probability prospects first. Now, in most databases, there's only going to be a handful of those every single day. From there, I move to my next group, my next group, my next group, until I move down. So I'm starting my day off with my best opportunities. And I'm probably going to roll through, a half an hour to an hour call block. I'm going to take a break. During that break, I'm going to update my database. I don't believe in updating databases while you're dialing. I know that some systems require that. I know that some companies have built some CRMs that make me cringe because it takes so long for a rep to do a call. I mean, you're taking 2 to 3 minutes between calls. It's no wonder people can't get through a call block. But what we typically do at my office, and there's one person that doesn't do this, but she's a savant. What we typically do is we build a list, and we'll either print it out or we'll put it on a screen, and we'll dial the list, and then we take some time to go update. So it only takes us 15, 30 minutes to update the database, sometimes less than that, because we're not talking to that many people anyway. And then we'll roll into a potential email block or social block. But I'll typically say I'm going to do two to three phone blocks in the morning. Afternoon phone blocks, like right after lunch, those type of things, are just not as productive as prospecting blocks in the morning. So if I'm a rep, I'm going to do the bulk of my prospecting first thing. And if I'm doing a prospecting block after lunch, it might be an email block. And the nice thing about email, and we were alluding to that earlier because of some of the cool tools that we have today, I can do email anytime. I mean, I can put together an email block, and I can have my email block go out at 8 in the morning. So, for example, I've got a client that they'll do the prospecting block in the morning. They'll take the prospects that they don't talk to. They'll drop that into an email system, create an email for them, send that out. They'll schedule it for 8 in the morning while they're doing their high-value prospecting block at 8 o'clock in the morning. That email's hitting, and then right after that, because you can get alerts and you can see who opened it, they pull all the opens and they dial them right after that. And that works because if the person opens your email first thing in the morning, it tells you that they're next to their phone, they're at their desk, they're holding their smartphone, one of those things. And I think it's different for everybody. So I really hate giving people like prescriptive, here's exactly how you have to do this. I think you have to find your comfort zone. But I will tell you that if you move your prospecting blocks to the afternoon, you can tell me all day long, you can make up all the excuses you want to, you can whine, complain, and tell me that your afternoons are better, and I'm going to tell you that you're a liar, and I'll prove it to you. You're a liar. The best time to call is in the morning for most salespeople. Now, if you're selling real estate or high-end B2C or life insurance and you're selling to consumers, of course you're going to call at night. But that's not what most of the people watching this podcast are in business to business, and we know that business operates on pretty much an 8 to 6, 8 to 5 calendar or time clock.
Brilliant. And I'm curious to know, does the high volume change as your ticket item increases? Are you focusing more on, a smaller handful of people if you're selling, let's say, a half a million or higher product?
Well, typically, if you've got a really high ticket item that's got a really long sales cycle, so it's when you're getting that high end. I mean, if you're selling industrial equipment, the sales cycle actually could be lower, but the cost could be higher. So you've got complexity at the same time that you don't have a cycle. But typically, complexity and cycle tend to correlate. Does that make sense? And so when you're in a market where you have high dollar volume and complexity, as a rep, you typically have a smaller database to work with. So, for example, I grew up in uniform services, and when I was just a field rep, I wasn't doing in national accounts, wasn't doing regional accounts. I had 10,000 prospects in my database. So, most of our reps had somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 on a pretty big territory. So, but most business to business services reps are going to have about 5,000 deals or opportunities in their territory. If you're an enterprise rep, you might have 50 or 80 or 100. I mean, the numbers are going to go down. If you work in a niche industry with a complex product that has a high volume, or a high ticket on it, you're going to have a handful of of opportunities. Now, but this is where we have to start getting, and we'll just say keeping it real. Generally, if you're in a complex environment in a long sales cycle, the stakeholder group that you're dealing with is pretty wide and sometimes pretty deep. So you're dealing with buyers, and there's typically two types of buyers in complex accounts. There are buyers who have the ability to write a check. They can fund your deal, and there are buyers who can say yes. In other words, they can sign a contract. Sometimes they're the same person, but a lot of times they're not. A CFO funds it, and say a senior vice president says yes. Then you have people, we call them amplifiers, but you have amplifiers, and the amplifiers are people that are saying, hey, we have a need, we have a problem, we have an issue. So, and I'll give you an example of that, Sean. We had a client that they're selling a product that the CEO has to approve. But the CEO is never, ever, ever, ever going to move if the people that use the product don't have a problem with it. So the prospecting calls actually began by calling frontline people who were using this product and talking to them to find out where there were issues with the competitor. There were a lot of prospecting calls. You might call 10, 20 people in an account and build a relationship with them. Then you have seekers, and Henry, when we're talking about those inbound leads, those are your seekers. Seekers are also what we call Seymours. They're the people who someone sent them to get information. They will eat you alive, steal your time, take things away from you. You got to get away from those. But sometimes those seekers have the ability to influence. You've got influencers. You've got influencers who are naysayers. You've got influencers who can influence the deal. You've got influencers who can influence the buying process. You've got to be able to work with them and shape them and not get stuck with them. And then you've got coaches. You've got to build a coach, and you've got to develop coaches who are on your side and want to work with you. So, Sean, you may have 100 prospects in a database if you're an enterprise sales rep, but most of your prospecting is going to be on the phone developing and building out that network. And oh, by the way, if that's your database, you're probably going to get 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 opportunities a year, maybe, that are going to move into the pipe, and it's basically on a buy window open or a trigger event. And so a lot of your prospecting is paying attention, what's going on, touching base with people, going in and doing early discovery, making sure that you're not doing demos too early, but you're doing some small micro demos early enough to kind of get people bought in. And again, and that changes. I mean, if you've got 500 prospects, it's a little different. If you've got 1,000, it's a little different. If you've got 10,000, I mean, I've got one of my reps has 30,000 prospects. The volume is massive. We've done all day long. So you have to look at your world that way, but you have to understand that the more complex the deal, the higher ticket, the more people that are involved, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to your company to make sure that you know every single human being in that account that has any level of influence on that deal, and that you know who they are, what they're doing. And Henry, this is how you begin using the internet, because you can connect with those people, you can get to know them, you can work with them, but you begin doing that process. So your prospecting shifts and changes just a little bit, and it's something that that will also shift with your tenure in the account. If you're brand new, you're going to be calling everybody. If you're, if you've been there for 20 years, you know the buying windows. So you're going to be making really strategic prospecting touches. Does that make sense?
Oh, perfect sense. Perfect sense.
We're going to take one more question from our viewers, and then we can go ahead and wrap up. Jeb, I agree with your concept of making multiple touches to qualify a qualified prospect in order to build familiarity. However, when do you really feel it's time to move on and reconnect at a later date? Any advice on email or call hooks before you move on?
Well, let's talk about familiarity for a second. So the law of familiarity says that the more familiar a prospect is with you, the more likely that they will engage. And this is where marketing comes in to some extent. But if Sean, you were describing you started off working with a startup. You were employee number 6. When you called, they didn't have any familiarity with you, so you're like creating that from the ground up. And
Exactly.
that happens a lot with startups. So today, the calls we were making today were part of that process. We have to look at a long-term strategic campaign. So when we think about that, Kelly, part of what we're thinking about is how do we build a strategic prospecting campaign that helps us create that familiarity. So my first question that I would ask you, if I was sitting down with you as a coach, I would say, okay, the prospects that you feel like you want to go through this process of building familiarity with, are they qualified? Are they high potential? Are they dream accounts, conquest accounts, target accounts? Where do they fit? Because you can't really have that level of engagement with every prospect in your database. Now, if you're an enterprise rep, Sean, you got 100. You're doing that with everybody. Lead nurturing never stops. It's always on, because you can't afford to ever quit. But if you've got 5,000 prospects, you're going to pick a handful of them. And what I typically do, Kellen, is I look at a group and I say, okay, I'm going to pull maybe my top 100 prospects in my territory, and I'm going to focus on them, and I'm going to have identified those top 100 using, say, my ideal prospect profile, some type of qualifying information. When I was in the uniform industry, it would be when's the contract coming up. So if I knew their contract was coming up, I'm doing everything I can until I don't sell them and they sign another contract. As soon as they sign another contract, I'm moving on, because I can't do anything with them for the next 3 to 5 years. So that was the long answer to your question, Kellen. The short answer is when to move on when they're no longer fit your ideal prospect profile. If the person says, like, I'll give you an example. Last night, guys trying to sell me timeshare. I said, you're a sales guy, I'm a sales guy. I'm telling this up front so you don't waste your time, so you can go spend your time on someone. I will never buy a timeshare, ever. Never. And he hit me, he tried to overcome that. I said, you're really good. Read my lips. Never. I will never buy a timeshare. And he smiled and said, okay, I tried. And I said, I know somebody's listening to the call. You did a great job. This is fantastic. But he got that it was time to move on. I was no longer qualified. I was not qualified at all. And I think you have to use your good judgment there. And if someone says never, ever, ever, you move on. You always come back. Somebody says don't call me back, I'm going to call them back. I'm going to call them back tomorrow. I don't be a stalker, but I'm going to call them back. The second thing is call hooks or email hooks. On call hooks, I don't know your industry or your product, so it'd be really difficult. There's a chapter
real
in the
estate
book.
software.
What's it?
Real estate software. They serve
software.
the real estate industry.
Yeah. So if you serve the real estate industry, your call hooks, there's a chapter in here on messaging, but if you're in the real estate industry, the call hook's really going to be around what's important to the real estate brokers. I'm assuming you're dealing with brokers. What's important to them? What's driving them? So right now, the real estate market in a lot of places is absolutely red hot. And so we all know that 2006, 2007, 2008, it just completely bombed. It was the worst real estate market ever, and there are still some markets that are trying to recover, but a lot of them are smoking right now. And we know that because our phone's ringing from real estate companies who are calling us to come in and train and help their real estate agents do a better job with prospecting. So what I would be focusing on hooks are right now, given where the market is and where you're prospecting into, what are the biggest issues or pains, and I hate to use pain because pain is a real issue for me, but problems or emotional things that are keeping your brokers from doing what they love to do. And what they love to do is go out and make money selling real estate. So I would focus on those as core hooks. And what I would do is go through the messaging chapter in Fanatical Prospecting, take a look at that. There's another resource that I would recommend as well. Mike Weinberg wrote a book called New Sales Simplified. I reference it in Fanatical Prospecting. He's got a great, couple of chapters on building your sales story. That process can also help you with hooks, but I would really be focusing on what problem do you solve? Where are you able to immediately connect with them emotionally? And you know that because you talk to enough brokers. That won't work if you're say you're trying to get into, I don't know, South Dakota, North Dakota, maybe North Dakota, where maybe the real estate market isn't good. I don't know. I've never been to North Dakota, but and somebody's going to say something ugly to me. I know, but it's cold there, and I'm from the South. So, but maybe it's not great there. Maybe in Miami, if you're in the condo market, it's huge. I think if you understand that, then it's going to shift from market to market. But I would that's what I would do, Sean. In Carolyn, I would focus on that.
Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and we'll wrap up with a few questions here that I think are really going to be relevant. My daughter waving, hey. So. What about tools? Tools for prospecting. Let's say you're a new sales manager, you're a new VP of sales. What tools do you find are working well? What do you see that your clients are using that are working to help prospect more efficiently?
The number of tools is, I mean, it's a plethora, and there are new ones coming on every single day. The number of apps that come in, it's incredible. So there's tons of them. I can tell you that SalesLoft is a tool that works really well. There are a number of companies that are out there. Velocify is a company that I think a lot of, and they've got a process that automates the dialing of the phone. InsideSales.com's got a bunch of stuff out there that allows it to happen, and there are mixed reviews on all of those products depending on who you are. For field sales, those things don't work that great for field sales. I mean, honestly, the easiest thing for me is segment your database, keep your CRM up to date, build better lists out of your CRM, and if you do those things every single day, a lot of these tools don't matter nearly as much. I think the CRM is your greatest tool ever. I think most salespeople treat it like a trash can instead of a gold mine, and your job is to fill in the jigsaw puzzle and use all of the tools that are robust and that you have. HubSpot's got a brand new, if you're an independent, they got a brand new free CRM out there. We use Salesforce.com. We think Salesforce works great for us. But there's others like Nimble, and Microsoft Dynamics just bought LinkedIn, and I think Dynamics, I think Microsoft's done a beautiful job of making some major changes and upgrades and integrating that into 365. There are a couple of tools that I really love around research and email. So we use two different tools for email. We use Tellwise, and I love Tellwise, and I like the folks over at Tellwise. It's a fantastic little tool. It allows you to combine email and chat and even the telephone. It's a beautiful little app, and I hate to say it, so I shouldn't say it's a little app. It's a beautiful app, and it works. And I love it. I'm a big fan of Tellwise. Another company that I love is KiteDesk, and we use KiteDesk as well. They're fantastic for research. They help you organize your call blocks, and the folks over there are getting better and better and better, and they're improving every day, and they're adding on features. HubSpot has just launched HubSpot Sales Pro, and we also use HubSpot Sales Pro. So we're using that for email. We're not using their CRM because we're with Salesforce, and I've been using Salesforce for a long time, and I just love the tool. It works for us. There's a couple other companies that I think are world of. Cirrus Insight, another one that helps with your with your email, and then just a plethora of social tools out there that you can tap into. HubSpot, I use HubSpot for inbound marketing, and I use HubSpot for primarily my social research and keeping track of people. And I think HubSpot does a really nice job of integrating all of that. And I'm sure that there's somebody listening to this. There's probably 10,000 companies out there that have other tools. I mean, there's SalesLoft out there that I've heard. I've not used SalesLoft personally, but I've heard beautiful things about SalesLoft and what they do from research and getting you good lists and helping you with leads. So and I just think as a as a business owner, my biggest concern with all the tools is dialing us in to using the ones that make the most sense for us and not overcomplicating it. And for example, with Salesforce, and all the Salesforce consultants hate me when I say this, we don't have customization. We've stripped it all down. I've been through every customized process you can do with Salesforce. I've built it from the ground up. I've pushed it across enterprise. It basic works. Like, don't overcomplicate this. It's you reaching out and touching a prospect and asking for something, and that something you're asking for is their time. So most of the tools should help you organize so that the time that you spend in your call block or your email block or your social block is well used, is efficient and effective, and should make you more productive. And if it's not making you more productive, I don't care how good it is, don't use it, move on to something else. And for me, nothing works better than this crazy thing. It's called a phone. I use this, right? And a list. You give me a list and a phone, and I'll make you a lot of money.
It's so true, and really, really good ones. Some of those I hadn't heard of. One of my sales mentors says the best CRM is the one that you actually use, and so it's key. You just have to use it and utilize it. And sometimes the one that you use is really the best one for you. Yeah. For someone who's listening to this either live or on the recording, let's say it's a sales rep and they like what you're talking about. Where can they buy your book because it's awesome?
Well, thank you. We've been really blessed with Fanatical Prospecting, and this, I got it right here. This is gratuitous advertising.
Yep.
You can get Fanatical Prospecting, get any of Barnes & Noble's 640 stores across the United States. You can buy it in most airports. In the major cities, many of the train stations and the bookstores will have it there. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Books A Million, at any of the online locations. If you want a signed copy of it, so if you want my autograph on it and a little bit of swag that comes with that, you can go to salesgravy.com and go to our store, and you can buy it there. But really anywhere that you can buy a book, you can buy Fanatical Prospecting. And if you do buy Fanatical Prospecting, so a couple of things. If you go to a Barnes & Noble store and you hold my book up and you take a selfie with you and the book and you post it online and you tag me, I'm at Salesgravy in most places, but you can tag me, Jeb Blount. I will send you a box of really cool Fanatical Prospecting swag. So some of the things we talk about in the book, like the door hangers, those type of things, I'll send you that. So, but you have to do it at Barnes & Noble and take a picture of yourself. But if you do buy the book, my phone number and my email address and all of my social handles are in the book. But you can get me on Twitter. I'm at Salesgravy on Twitter. Sean, you've been on Twitter. You know I'm a Twitter nut job, so I love Twitter. Mm-hmm. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I've got a Facebook page. I think the Facebook page is Jeb on Demand, and my regular Facebook is Sales Gravy. I'm on Snapchat. I Snapchat really poorly. I'm awful at it. But I'm also on Instagram, and I love it when people connect with me. And if you write me, I almost always say, hey, I hate to say I guarantee, but I promise you that I'll write back and I'll respond to you. And if you've got comments about the book, please get in touch with me. Because man, I love talking to people who love Fanatical Prospecting. It's been wonderful.
You've been incredibly responsive, and for the amount of Twitter followers you have alone, I'm always impressed that you're almost always responding to something that I'm saying to you. So it's really, really cool that you're still responding to people even though you've got such a wide swath and a wide reach. So last question is, so for the sales manager or the company that's really loving this, how do they reach out to you to hire you for your consulting services?
So the best thing to do would be to call us. We're at 844-447-3737. That's 844-447-3737. You can also send an email to Andy, A-N-D-Y, at salesgravy.com. Andy's my Vice President of Business Development, and He's fantastic, and he's the easiest person to get to. I travel all the time. My email address, and somebody's going to spam me. Go ahead, that's cool. Everybody does. I'm Jeb at salesgravy.com. Like, I've given this thing out, and if I get about 1,000 emails a day, and most of it's just crap. So, but I deal with it. But it's Jeb at salesgravy.com, and you can also go to fanaticalprospecting.com. By the way, this is something that a lot of people know. In the book, there's a secret code, and you get access to fanaticalprospecting.com. It's about a $1,200. We say it's $599 in the book, but we extended the subscription for a year, so it's about a $1,200 value. And there's just tons of stuff, including training programs, videos, articles about prospecting, tools. There's a whole forum, like you asked about tools. There's a whole forum in there where we're all like, we find a tool, we go in there and type it in. Here's a tool. Here's what we like about it. So we're reviewing those things. So you can find me there. But if you've got any question and you want to talk about what we do, especially our Fanatical Prospecting boot camps that are fun, they generate results. I mean, your salespeople will walk out with either deals in their pocket or appointments from our boot camps. Give us a call, and we'd love to talk to you and learn about you and see if we'd be a fit.
Awesome. That's incredible. Awesome. Jeb, thank you so much. You've been a hero, a sales hero of mine for a while. Ever since I read your book, and you've added thousands of dollars to my bank account from what I've learned from the Fanatical Prospecting. So thank you a ton for all that you have invested into me and the time that you've invested into the audience here tonight.
Well, thank you,
Jeb. This is awesome. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both.
And thanks for answering my email out of the 1,000. I really appreciate it.
I answer my email. If you send me an email, I promise you I'll get to it. Now, this is the other thing I tell people. If you send me an email and I don't answer, send it to me again, because it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I'm a moron and I missed it. So hit me again, and I'll answer it. And I do. And for you guys, listen, I know that you guys get up every day and you do this for a living and you're selling for a living, and I have unbelievable respect for that. I love that you're doing this, and I hope people are paying attention to you, because this is how you learn. And Kellen says, thanks, Kellen. I appreciate the questions. But I want to tell you guys how grateful I am. I'm grateful that you not only read my book, that you put the things in practice, and that you took the time to invite me onto your show. It's been a blast, so I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely have you back. You're welcome back any time.
I can't wait.
We'll make sure that we have you. So a couple of things I'll just mention to kind of wrap up here. Thanks for everyone who has listened and watched. It means a lot to us. We're now well into season 2. We've got episode 1 under our belts. We actually are heading directly into episode 2 this Sunday, which is actually going to be our most likely new time that we do Real Sales Talk. We're going to have CEO of Spiro, Adam Honig, and he's probably going to correct me on his last name when he gets on the show this Sunday. But we're gonna talk about how artificial intelligence is solving the sales follow-up problems with following up with leads, and I've been a user of Spiro ever since they were in an alpha and well into beta, and I'm a customer of theirs now. So really, this is going to be a really good one. Are you, Jeb? Do you know? Are you familiar with Spiro?
I've heard of Spiro, but I'm not completely familiar with it. So, but I'm going to go check that out. That's a tool I didn't know about. That's what we need. That's why we have a forum on Fanatical Prospecting, so we learn about these things.
Totally. Really interesting. So the software, just to kind of give the short elevator pitch, it's using artificial intelligence to help you keep track of the opportunities you have in Salesforce. And so I get emails and I get push notifications from my quote unquote digital assistant. And right now, you can choose different personalities. There's like the coach, there's the Jewish mother, there's the R-rated version, there's the surfer dude. And they all have these personalities that then reach out to you to help keep your deals top of mind so they don't fall through the cracks.
Very good. Another
tool that has really helped me in my career be successful. So we're going to have Adam on the show this Sunday. It's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern. So for those that are listening to this, we'd love to have you on. Again, Jeb, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it, and have a fun trip in Japan coming up.
Thank you.
Awesome. Everyone, have a great night. See ya.
Have a great one, guys.